Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Comics Evolve, where we discuss all things around comics media culture with your hosts, Andy, Jarian, and Alex.
Welcome to Comics Evolve with myself, Jarian Gibson.
And I'm Alex Straub.
And let's see if our Facebook page is working today. It is not working, but I've already made a post saying if you don't see it, then go to one of our other locations. So we'll just roll with it while I'm still working through support while we're having problems with our Facebook page. But everywhere else should be working, including the recording for the podcast. So we're covering all of our bases. How you doing today, Alex?
I'm good. I'm a little bit under the weather. I've got the sniffles, but I'm here. So that's always good. Been a napping day for me, so can't complain about that. But
you watch anything new while you're trying to rest up from the cold?
No, I don't think I've watched anything new. I'm still on my Avatar: The Last Airbender kick. I got one of the books. It's about Kyoshi, which is the Avatar before Roku. I'm gonna start reading that here soon. So that's pretty awesome. But I'm trying to think of what the last thing I watched was. I think actually the last TV show I watched was The Boys, believe it or not. So I haven't really watched much of anything. I watched that the other day. So what about you? Have you watched anything new recently?
I watched a pretty good movie, and it actually involved Mahershala Ali.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah, it was Julia Roberts was in it. And it was a pretty cool one. It's called Leave the World Behind.
Okay.
And it comes off like a M. Night Shyamalan movie, but it's not an M. Night Shyamalan movie. And basically the premises of the movie is, I won't get too deep into it because at first you think it's one thing, but it ends up being another thing. But basically it's the destabilization of civilization. And so it's an interesting movie. Ethan Hawke's also in it. And so it involves mainly those three. Kevin Bacon's in it. So Kevin Bacon is one of like those like prepper type,
doomsday preppers.
Doomsday preppers. So it actually is pretty good. My wife and I watched it. It was pretty good. I'm trying to think what else. I started showing Freaks and Geeks to the kids. You remember that movie? That series?
Uh-huh.
We've been watching that. I haven't seen that in forever. Too bad it's one season, but there's so many people in that series. Like Linda Cardinelli's in it, Seth Rogen's in it, James Franco's in it. Even Busy Phillips, Jason Schwartzman shows up in it. What's his name? The big dude from Leaving Sarah Marshall. He was up for the thing at one point.
I cannot think of his name.
Yeah, he's one of the main characters of it.
I tell you what, though, James Franco, that's an old name. I feel like I haven't seen or heard anything really out of him in a long time. So.
Yeah, he had some issues with some stuff going on with his acting schools, and it seemed like that he was using his position to something. Yeah, I caught it, and he settled on it, and he's kind of been quiet out of the scenes for a while.
No.
But yeah, his brother's still doing stuff. Dave Franco.
Okay.
Jason Segel is in it.
Jason Segel. Okay.
Shia LaBeouf shows at one point in it. Rashida Jones is in it for a little bit. Lizzie Kaplan's even in it. There's all kinds of people in here. Ben Foster's in it. So yeah, there's a lot of people that you see today, and it's like even the guy that plays Biff in Back to the Future, the gym teacher in it. And I was like, I forgot how many of these people were in here, and I believe Judd Apatow's somehow tied to it as well. So it makes sense when you see things like some of those movies and some of the characters. So yeah, even like the heckler from Happy Gilmore is the dad in it. So it's like and even the one guy from Grandma's Boy that's always in Adam Sandler movies as well. He's in it also. So it was pretty interesting to see like all these people. So we're showing it to the kids. I'm like, they're old enough to watch this, and they're starting to get to that age where my daughter's going to junior high and that kind of stuff. So I was like, they'll start seeing this kind of stuff where friends change and things are changing and that kind of stuff and how to deal with different groups. So yeah, it's been a pretty fun watch.
I'll tell you what, I watched Back to the Future. This was probably 2 weeks ago or something like that, the first one. And those are some of my favorite movies of all time. I love the Back to the Future movies. And it's so funny to me, like going back and watching those. Like some of the visual effects are so poor in some of those, but like man, I love those movies, and I love that DeLorean and everything like that. It's just they're fun to watch. I only watched the first one, but I'm gonna go back and watch the trilogy. I'm not the biggest fan of the third one. The third one's kind of you know,
I like
like
it. I like the
yeah,
third one. That's my favorite one because if they go back to the Wild West, how they do stuff, how they find things, you kind of see the tie to his family from the past. Everything's to the future. You know, and then he goes to the past. So I kind of like that one, how they go back to those times and see those things, and same time or different times, same problems.
Yeah, and I mean, I think that's kind of. I think originally when they filmed those movies, they did the first one, and then when they filmed the second one, they also filmed the third one at the same time. So, like, you know, I don't. It's not that I hate the third one. I love that trilogy. It's still one of my favorite trilogies, but they're just fun movies. I like Michael J. Fox. He played a character called Alex P. Keaton, funny enough, on something completely different, and that's actually why
the TV show with him and Justine Bateman was that one.
I think so, yeah.
Family Ties was that
yep,
show? Yes.
Yep.
Okay.
And funny enough, I was actually named Alex after Michael J. Fox because of that character. So my dad liked Alex P. Keaton. So, yeah, you know, it's one of those things where I like Michael J. Fox a lot, and I love those Back to the Future movies. They were great. They're very entertaining. And I was talking with somebody recently, and they're like, "I hate those movies," and I was like, "Well, I guess we can't be friends anymore," you know.
I wonder if they'll end up making another one or a continuation or something, because
like a reboot.
Well, you kind of got the tease of his kids in that one version, but then when they came back, that all changed because they went back. They had to go back again or something like that. You know, and it changed the future because he found the book, the betting book. So that changed things and all that. So you kind of saw two different times of his future, different ways because of different consequences. Yeah. And so I wonder if they could do another one with, you know, him as a parent and maybe his kids find it or something, or get into it. I don't know, kind of passing the torch.
I think they did like a cartoon for it years ago, but I'm going to be honest with you, I never really saw it. And funny enough, I don't know if you ever watched Rick and Morty. That's kind of like an off, like, you know, kind of shoot of it was kind of them making something that was meant to originally be like Back to the Future. And that's why Morty's called, you know, you got Marty in Back to the Future, you got Morty in that, you know. It's very funny, but that was just one thing that I think really inspired them to make that show, and I think that's why I liked Rick and Morty so much when that came out.
Is Christopher Lloyd still alive?
I think so, but he's got to be like 80 years old or something. He's really old.
We're at that age where you never know with some of these actors. Yep, he's still alive. He's 85 years old.
Yeah.
So I don't know if he could show up as, you know, or do like a cameo or something like that, and you know, especially with Michael J. Fox's Parkinson's, if, you know, how he would do with it, but maybe do some clips of them and then focus on his kids, kind of passing the torch. You know, someone like Tom Holland could be like Marty McFly Jr. or whatever.
Yeah, I'm not a big fan of Tom Holland, but I'm not gonna lie, I actually think he'd be a decent like Marty McFly Jr. You know, that'd be pretty good for him. I know, like I've seen there's some like fan art out there of RDJ playing like Doc Brown and him being like Marty McFly and them doing like a reboot kind of, if they did a reboot, but I don't know if I would like to see it like that. I do kind of like the idea of it just being kind of something that they kind of just pick up on like years later in that universe, if you will, and maybe it'd be his son or something like that, and that'd be kind of cool.
Like maybe his son, like his son's looking for stuff, and you know, maybe like maybe they start off where Marty has passed away, and then only the wife is still alive, which is
Vanessa,
but what's the actress's name?
I do not remember her name.
Yeah, but she's in it, and she's talking to Tom Holland as the son, and he's going through the stuff, and he ends up finding DeLorean, and maybe we get like a cameo from, you know, maybe Doc Brown, Christopher Lloyd, I don't know, but it'd be kind of interesting to do, and I'm surprised they haven't, because that movie made a lot of money, and I think even when they still show it or do like the theater plays of it, it still pulls in money. So
yeah, somehow I ended up with like 2 different trilogy like DVD sets that were like anniversary sets, and I don't know how I bought 2 of them, but like I found both of them, and I was like and somehow I put them in like my little DVD collection. I was like looking at it the other day, and I was like, oh, I'm gonna watch Back to the Future, and I was like, wait, how do I have 2 of these? So you know, apparently I'm that big of a fan that I love those movies that much that I bought a couple of sets of them. But yeah, they were great movies, and they didn't age the best, but still, I think they kind of did. It's just some of the visual effects look kind of rough, like the giant shark that comes out when I don't remember what Jaws movie they're making fun of, but it's like Jaws 17 or whatever, and the 3D shark comes out and like fake bites somebody, you know. It's like so funny.
It's Leah Thompson, and I should remember that name because we were just talking about Howard the Duck before we came live. So yeah, Leah Thompson, and like I said, if Michael J. Fox is up to it, have him, you know, come back. But if he's not, there's ways they can still do it. But it's funny that you mentioned RDJ, Robert Downey Jr., because there's been some chatter about him this week. That potentially there was possibly some tie to Deadpool and Wolverine, some cameo potentially, but it's not going to happen. But there's still some kind of something that leads to that, and then possibly some tie to Secret Wars. I just hope if they're doing some kind of RDJ thing, it's some kind of Iron Man from their universe. I do not want... before I get this other part, there was some chatter about Doom as well. I just hope that they don't make Doom or RDJ a variant that is Doom in another universe. And he's the one pulling the strings for Kang and then possibly for other people as well. It ends up being the big bad. I don't want them to rush Doom into the series. I also don't think recasting RDJ as another character, because if she played such a big character, yes, they've recast other characters in the MCU, but they were more minor roles. They weren't as big of a roles, you know? It's such a long character in the MCU as well as RDJ was, so I hope they don't do that. I hope they go another direction and they give Doom his proper introduction and proper screen time. I don't want to see, just because the whole Jonathan Majors Kang thing, I don't want them to see this to kind of shoehorn Doom into the MCU right now.
And you know, I've always thought, like, in the MCU, it'd be kind of cool. Like, Doom's outfit, the metal suit that he wears, kind of looks like the Iron Man armor, kind of. You know, it'd be kind of cool if Doom, like, took Stark Tech and built that suit. But that doesn't mean that I want to see RDJ play Doom and then wear another suit, you know? So, yeah, I'm hoping they don't do that. That would be awful, in my opinion. I mean, RDJ is, like, iconic as Iron Man at this point. We don't need it. Like, let's let somebody else be iconic as Doom and let them be that role, you know? We don't need RDJ back. I mean, RDJ's getting kind of older too. I mean, he's gonna be like 60 years old now. So I want Doom around for a really long time. And I know we're potentially going towards a soft reboot here in the future, but I don't want to see Doom like rammed in right before the soft reboot and then not see him anymore. You know, like, we should have Doom for 10 years, like, you know, so.
Yeah, I don't want to see Doom until a post-credits tease of Fantastic Four, honestly.
Yeah. So.
But they could bring RDJ back as an RDJ Iron Man from another universe for Secret Wars as himself. They could bring him back as an AI for Riri. There's, you know, or Morgan gets into the mix, because we saw the rescue tease in Endgame with Pepper. You know, maybe Morgan becomes Rescue in the MCU as she grows up and could be he could be AI for her. Yeah, go that route, but anything else, you know.
Well, and they've already laid that groundwork for him to be like an AI for Riri, right? Because she broke into Stark systems. It could be like a protocol that he had where, like, his Iron Man suits are basically just like learning from him, learning how to mimic him, learning to create an AI that would be like him. So that way one day that AI, after he's gone, could then lead the next generation of heroes and be kind of like a, what is the word I'm looking for here? Kind of like somebody that would kind of help assist them make decisions and do the things, kind of like a confidant, if you will. And it could be in Riri's suit, and it could be just one of those things that, you know, we saw that she already had plans from Stark Systems and Stark Industries and whatnot, so she could just easily have been in the systems and have found it, and boom, and then it'd just be one of those things like, you know, we saw the Edith thing with Spider-Man Even Dead. I'm still the hero. Yeah, I'm the hero, you know? So it's one of those things where I think you could kind of have a protocol kind of like that and just let Tony just kind of come back. And the great thing about that is RDJ should be a lot cheaper for that, because he doesn't actually physically, he could just physically just do like a thing for a hologram.
Yep.
But
and then voice.
Yeah, but otherwise he could just be like Jarvis was in the beginning, which was, you know, just a voice over a headset and her helmet, you know?
Yep.
So, I like that idea, and I kind of hope they do something like that in the future.
So moving into the topic of today's show, The Boys Season 4, Episode 5, Beware the Jabberwock, My Son. So at the end of Episode 4, we saw Huey's mother give his father the compound V to save his life, and his eyes opened. So we kind of get what happens next. We find out that the compound V fell out of Huey's pocket, and his mother gave him the compound V, which is kind of a weird way to put it, because it didn't look like it would have fell out, and you think you would have heard it hit the floor possibly, unless it fell onto the bed. I don't know. When it was over.
That didn't make any sense to me. Like, you literally see him in that last episode stick it in his pocket and walk out, and it's like, well, I mean, if it would have fallen, it was like most likely in a glass vial, maybe it would have broken, like, like whatever. And it just seemed weird. I thought it would have been a little bit better if they would have had her show up and she would have had compound V somehow, and it would have been like one of those things where it's like, oh, Huey's like, oh, I wasn't gonna do this, and then like it turns out she just does it on her own. And it was just very odd when she was just like, oh, well, you were going to give him that, so I just went ahead and did it. I mean, wasn't that why you got it? And it's like, but yeah, I mean, it was, I didn't like how they did that in this episode, to be honest.
It was kind of sad to see, too, because once he woke up, he was okay for a little bit, but then he started drifting back to when Huey was younger, when the mom left. He had that power, he could phase, when he couldn't control the phase, so he was just killing people, like took the guy's heart out, or shut the guy's bed, that kind of stuff. And then he kind of got into it where he was going after them because he didn't believe them. He was mad at the mother, didn't recognize older Huey. Huey kind of brought him back, and then they finally had to get him to calm down, and then finally put him down.
That was kind of a heartbreaking part of this episode, seeing all that, we basically spent the whole episode with them trying to wrangle him up and figure out how to deal with him. And, we see him kind of jumping the gun here a little bit, but we do see him die at the end of this episode. And I don't know if they really needed to kill him off in this episode or anything like that, not that he was like a pivotal character or anything like that for the show. But they kind of just had him. It was very funny. It was like, I love the line about where he's talking about the pizza rolls and everything like that, and he's like, yeah, I was looking at Supreme, or was it this? Yeah, you know what, it was Supreme because it had the little green peppers. And Huey's like, Dad, none of this matters, like, stop talking about this, and I think, like, seeing that, like, it was one of those things where seeing the mom come back, I feel like maybe we'll see her maybe start to kind of switch into like a parent role kind of for Huey now that his father's gone, because it seemed like he was ignoring his father for the most part, and he didn't even realize that he was in the hospital until like after it was kind of too late and he was brain dead. So, yeah, and I mean, like, we see in this episode that those who take compound V that are not in a good state when they take it struggle. And, I kind of imagine that maybe this is something that's maybe foreshadowing maybe a little something for Butcher. Maybe that's why, Butcher seems like after he took the compound V, he's got that thing kind of slithering around inside of him. So maybe it's something similar to that they're kind of going to play on, later on in the season. But yeah, just very sad to see. What's his name? Simon Pegg?
Yeah, Simon Pegg.
Yeah.
Scotty in the new Star Trek series.
Yeah, and I mean, Huey was based on him. So it's one of those things where obviously he was too old. If the show would have been made probably in the 90s, then he could have played that, I love that movie, Shaun of the Dead. It's like one of my favorite zombie movies.
Or what's the other one where they go to the beer, they have to get to the bar, it's called something else. But I know Shaun of the Dead, they have to go to the Winchester, but then there's another movie where they have to go like back to the bar, get to some bar or something like that. It's different from Shaun of the Dead. What's that movie?
It's not Hot Fuzz, is it the one where they're cops?
No, with the cops. No, let me lift this up real quick because it's gonna bother me now. What was it called? Because there was Shaun of the Dead, and he has the same friend that from Shaun of the Dead. The World's End. That's the other one. Kind of the same people and the same kind of cast. So you kind of have that. Then you have Hot Fuzz. So yeah.
Yeah, he's a great actor though, and I like that guy. So I mean, it was nice to see him as Huey's father since that character was originally based on him. But I just I don't think we needed to lose him so far, but or not so far into this season, but I would say just like so early on, that could have been something that, honestly, in my opinion, he could have probably stuck around until season 5, you know?
Yeah.
So, but yeah, anyways.
And then, yeah, I agree with you too that they kind of made the transition over to his mother. It seems like they kind of bonded over this. He kind of found out more to the story than her just leaving, you know, why she left, how her and his father were still in communication at times.
Yeah.
So I think that helped, and then them going through this, definitely there's going to be a bond. But I wonder if, because again, she works for Vought in some kind of like natural health skin line type thing. So
Yeah.
I wonder if there's something else going on here with her that we don't know yet.
Yeah, maybe she's like a double agent or something like that. Like she's trying to find something out for the boys or something, you know? That would be interesting. Her timing was very odd. I get that she was like, I guess, the power of attorney for his father, but still, like, you know, it was one of those things where I guess maybe they couldn't get in contact with Huey, or he couldn't get in contact with Huey or whatever, so they just called, you know, the power of attorney, which was his former wife. So, but one of the saddest parts, I think, in that entire episode was when he kept on talking about going to Paris for the Da Vinci tour, and then when he dies, he's still talking about it, and it's like, yeah, we're all 3 gonna go, and then it's just like, yeah, but very sad episode on that front. So
while we see one longtime character get killed off in the series, we're going to see a new longtime character return. So the return of Stan Edgar in the series. So, and it's an unlikely alliance, you would think, because basically, the Butcher and MM are going to him with a presidential pardon if they help him kill Newman. And information on to help them out. So they basically get him out with an ankle bracelet, and then he takes them to one of his secret location houses that he has. And so that was an interesting type of scenario.
One of his best lines in this is when they show up and they're like, hey, so, you know, she's basically turned Zoe into a soup as well, and he's caught off guard about that. Right before they get to that point in the conversation, he is like, you know, you gentlemen are interrupting me. I have pottery class in 10 minutes. And I laughed so hard at that. I don't know why. But, yeah, you know, like, I think him as Stan Edgar, first off, Esposito is a fantastic actor. He's so amazing. He just brings so much to any role that he plays, right?
Yep.
So, you know, he comes out of prison and they go to put him in that van, and he's like, do you have something I can lay down on the seat so I can sit on? Because it's just such a disgusting old van and everything, you know. I love that about him. And, yeah, I mean, like, we get to see a little bit of him and Newman in this episode. We kind of hear a little bit about, there seems to be some animosity there between those two. And, yeah, I mean, it seems like she's kind of angry because she feels like she was kind of told to lay low her entire life, and obviously she has not done that. I mean, obviously people don't know she's a soup, but she was a congresswoman. She ended up going to, you know, be the VP nominee for the United States. So it's one of those things that I think that her kind of turning on him, at one point in the episode, they make a remark about, like, you know, you're not upset about that? And he's like, no, I trained her to be that way, so I can't be upset with her for being that way. So, fantastic character, Stan Edgar. Love it.
I think it was for her setting him up and having him put away. I think that's what they were talking about, from her correctly.
Yep. So, yep, it was.
And then we find out who Zoe's dad finally is. It's Samir, the scientist, the one that's on the farm, who has been experimenting on animals with that virus, and also with Compound V. And we see that the Compound V has steeped into the water stream of that farm, and all the animals are all jacked up on Compound V. On Compound V. I thought what was interesting with that is that the rabbit that that Butcher lets go at the beginning, when they find that rabbit later, that rabbit has a similar type of possible power to Butcher, maybe, with the tentacles coming out of it, or kind of a venom-like, like I've been saying before, a venom-like quality before he actually kills the rabbit. So I thought that was interesting.
And that one was on Temp V in that lab when Butcher pulled the needle out of it. Yeah, and he pulled the rabbit out and he sat it down and he let it hop off. So, it's kind of one of those scenes where you think, oh, Butcher's kind of got a heart, right? And then they find out that, of course, Stan Edgar didn't even know that they were doing these tests on this virus at his farm. Of course, Newman's using his farm as a testing ground. It's got animals, it's got all kinds of stuff. And it kind of moves into one of these things where it's like the sheep are flying around, like all these like creatures, like the chickens, like they find that one guy and he's dead, and in his dead body are just some eggs, and they're like, what is this? And then all of a sudden they find out the chickens are soups too, So
the chickens, the cattle, the pig, the flying pigs.
Yep. So it's very interesting to see all of that and all the chaos that causes. And I mean, ultimately that's what this show is about, right? Is chaos. So it's one of those things where things always get dark and really chaotic and really bloody very quickly in this show. So craziness that happened on that farm.
Starlight's powers are on the fritz, and it looks like Starlight is having or Annie, or whoever you want to call her, but it looks like she's having a dilemma between the Starlight person and Annie in this series, and Newman called her out for it, saying you need to come to grips with who you want to be, or who's the real person, or let Annie come back, or something like that, and they kind of get into it. I thought it was interesting too with Newman is that when she showed up, their nose started bleeding. Kind of indication that she was around. Because at first I thought they all had some kind of mutant strain of the virus that quick when it first happened, but it ended up being Newman and her popping power. So, it seems like, Starlight needs to figure out who she is. We see at the end, she's looking at pictures of her in the Starlight uniform as she's being Annie now, and she has to come to terms with who she wants to be. Is she going to be one or the other? Is she going to become someone new? That's interesting as well. But towards the end of this, it looks like we think Samir is dead, but it's actually Butcher and MM pulling a fast one on everybody just by leaving his leg there.
But I mean, was it really MM though? Because it kind of seems like Butcher's kind of gone rogue a little bit,
what's Jeffrey Dean Morgan's character's name again?
Joe Kessler. But I'm still not convinced that that's just like a hallucination of Butcher, because they have a scene where he's like, you took my leg, and he's like, don't worry, we're gonna get you patched up, and he like looks over to Joe Kessler, and Samir like looks over, and Samir looks like who are you talking to, kind of, so I'm not exactly sure that he's actually there, because so far in the show I don't think we've seen Joe Kessler talk to anybody other than Butcher. So
Yeah, we only really confirmed that Huey's mom's actually there, and Huey was on the same hallucinations as Butcher. But it could be hallucination. But it looks like they got him, and now they want to use him because they used the last dose of the virus that they had to kill one of the last animals. And so that was funny when the pigs started falling from the sky. So they used that to kill one of the last animals, and now they basically have him kidnapped to create a new virus. So we're interested to see where they go, and if we see a reunion this season between Newman and Samira as well, since we know that he's now Zoe's dad. I wonder if Zoe knows if that's her father as well, or if she's still in the dark about who her father is.
And I mean, they actually say in this episode, when they're talking about the soups and the soup virus, that they don't believe that virus would actually be able to kill Homelander. I think they say something about they're looking for like a more potent version of that. Which, I mean, it's so weird to me, because it's like, all right, I get it, you want to kill Homelander, right, Butcher, but at the same time you want to save Ryan, who's in close proximity to Homelander, who's arguably just as powerful, maybe not even eventually more powerful.
I think he's more powerful, because look at the Starlight.
Yeah. So I mean, he's naturally born. Are you talking about Stormfront when he?
Yes. I'm sorry, Stormfront. Yes.
Yeah. So, that's one of those things where it's like, arguably he is more powerful, but I don't know if that's going to save him from a virus or anything. But we know that virus is basically only transferred through fluids and things like that, and so that's why when they only have one dose, they wanted that one dose to stick Newman with, because they wanted to kill Newman. But now it's like, okay, which that ultimately brings into question, she's basically invincible. Like, is she going to be able to get poked by a needle, and take the virus? Are you going to make her drink it? Like, what are you going to do there? So I think kind of a very similar thing that seems to be a theme with like a lot of the heroes and villains in this. Well, I'll call them villains, but they're all supposed to be heroes, right, for Vought. But yeah, I mean, a lot of them have like pretty thick skin, so you know, it's almost done by transmission in some way. So I would have been really curious to see how they would have moved forward with that if they could have done it that way with Newman. So
yeah, I think their only hope for Homelander is Ryan, just for the fact that you saw when Homelander was blasting Stormfront when they were in a relationship, she healed pretty quickly. It wasn't a big deal. But then when Ryan did that huge blast on her because of his mom, we saw that took parts of her apart, and she basically wasn't a normal person anymore after that. So I definitely think Ryan's their ace in the hole. And this episode kind of took a turn with Ryan and Homelander, but I think at the end, if Homelander's anything to Butcher, or it comes down to Butcher or Homelander that Ryan has to pick between, I think Ryan is going to pick Butcher over Homelander.
I think so too. And you know, Homelander's we see him later on in this episode. He's having a discussion with Ryan, and they're talking about making this movie with him and all this kind of stuff. And he's just basically like, do you want to do this or not? Like, you know, like, and I think Homelander's kind of gotten to the point now where he's like, you know, I've realized that I've been pointed in a direction and made to believe that like I'm being controlled for all this time when I don't have to be, when I never really was, and I don't want Ryan to feel that way. So he's kind of letting Ryan make his own choice. And I love that scene where the director's standing there and he's like, you know, why don't you give him your black card? Like, give him your AMX. Like, oh, you know what? I'll just give you my wallet. How about that? You know what? He doesn't seem happy. Why don't you give him your Jaguar keys too? You know, it's like, why does he need Jaguar keys? He can fly around anywhere. But yeah, I mean, like, I thought that was really kind of funny. And then we see towards the end of this episode that he asks Ryan, what do you want to do? And he's like, well, I just want to help people.
Yeah.
And then it's like him helping that girl, but then it gets a weird Homelander spin on it where it's like he's happy watching somebody, being tortured or being beat to death, basically, because like the girl just keeps on hitting the director over and over and over again. And it's going to be one of those moments where obviously, you know, I think we've kind of all come to this realization it's going to be a Butcher versus Homelander kind of thing for Ryan. Which way is he going to go? I think obviously he'll probably go to Butcher once he realizes that, you know, Homelander can be a bit cynical, unfortunately, you know.
Yeah, so it almost seemed like that Homelander going back to where he was raised pretty much took the last barrier that was holding Homelander back away. Because even before Homelander went to that, Homelander, yes, he took control of Vought, and he relegated down Ashley to just like their errand person type of person, not really in control anymore. But he still had some boundaries, a wall he was hitting before he actually let completely loose. And it seems like after going back to where he was raised, and the doctor telling him, it's like, you know, we mind controlled you, basically. You know, you could have left any time. Now it's the point where, like, okay, like you said, I was raised this way. I'm not going to raise Ryan that way and let Ryan do what he wants. So that was interesting. The last thing, too, before we get to, like, the whole VoughtCon stuff, the last thing about the farm, at the end of the episode, Edgar's going back because basically he can't fulfill the terms of the deal for a presidential pardon. We see Newman take out the Secret Service person, I think, or because it looked like a guy in a suit, so I think it was like an official like agent or something like that. But yeah, we see her take him out and get Stan Edgar at the car. So I wonder what that's going to lead to. Is she going to help him get out into hiding? Is there going to be some kind of ploy here for Stan Edgar to retake Vought Industries, maybe? But you know, so that was interesting as well.
Yeah, and I hate to say it like this, but you know, Stan Edgar, even though he's just a man, showed no fear to Homelander. And at one point he told Homelander, he was like, you know, I'm the best thing you got. And he was like, no, you're just bad product. And that is one of the craziest lines to me, because he's like, you know, we're basically a pharmaceutical company. And that was at the point in the show where Homelander had taken the compound V and spread it around the world to terrorists and things like that. And he's like, and you basically just gave away our best product. And Homelander seemed shocked by that statement. So, you know, obviously Vought knew of Ryan that whole time. They kept him hidden away and everything. And I think that was the backup plan for Homelander, right? Get this kid to grow up, and then eventually, like, if Homelander gets out of control, he can just kill him, kind of type of thing. And yeah, I mean, Homelander was obviously, like, we'll say version 1 of that program of being like the ideal soup, but like Ryan's kind of like the phase 2, in my opinion. and Homelander's got tons of problems, tons of issues, and him kind of being in control of Vought is kind of bad in my opinion. So.
Would you say version 3 though? Would you think Stormfront was the first version 1 person?
Well, yeah. I mean, technically, yeah. She was
Liberty Bell, whatever they called her old name was, because she was the guy's wife.
Yeah, she was like the first official suit in the show. But I mean, like, I guess from a perspective of like them trying to make a suit the way that they wanted to. I mean, Homelander's basically like Superman, right? Like, they basically were trying to engineer him to be unstoppable and also be controlled. And then part of the problem is when you make somebody that's just so powerful like he is, you can't control them. So, you know, the only way you can do that is by either trying to brainwash them or they're a good person. And the brainwash has now been broken with Homelander. He's no longer really brainwashed, but he's not a good person. So it's like Ryan is a good person. And even in that moment where he like let that girl beat up that director, he says, I want to help people because it's what my mom would want me to do. So, like, you know, that's kind of where I think that's going to be the difference maker, where ultimately the thing that tethers Ryan down to be a good person is going to be his mother and the memory of his mother. So,
so I wonder if Stan Edgar will be back and what other secrets does he have up his sleeve as well that we don't know about. But then going on to VotCon, which basically is a spoof on Comic-Con, it seems like. And the funniest thing I got for it, did you see the Marvel like lineup they had about their timeline?
I saw the Seven Forever up there and stuff like that. Yeah, it was so funny, and I should have paused the screen when they came up with all those movies, because like I would have loved to have seen. But I saw like Tech Knight got a movie and stuff like that.
Interesting that he's back too. Last season, I think I have a screenshot of it somewhere. I'll look for it real quick.
It was interesting. It was very much like, you know, D23. It was V52. It made me feel like a mix between D23 and the new 52 comic book, like things for DC that they did years ago, where they had like 52 titles. But I didn't actually count how many movies and projects and stuff that they had on that board. But I mean, it had to be at least 20, 30 things.
Yeah, so I have it here in a screenshot that I found. So there was Phase 7, 8, 9, and 10. So Phase 7 was Training A-Train, and we've seen parts of that this season already with Will Ferrell being his, you know, the surrogate for his brother and his coach. Fierce Cracker, Lord Soldier, Homelander, Land of the Free, Home of the Saved, The Deep, Secrets of Atlantis, The Seven Reborn, the Tech Knight, and Super School were Phase 7. Phase 8 is Homelander, Soldier vs. Soldier Boy, Annihilation, The Deep, Lifeguard Summer, A-Train, Off the Tracks, The Seven Returns, Firecracker, Heaven's Miracle, which that trailer she had was kind of, you know, very
weird.
Yeah. The Tech Knight, Nightlight, the Teenage Kicks, Home for 2, Kwanzaa. We're Home for Kwanzaa 2. G2 G-Man, so a little X-Men spoof there. That was Phase 8. Phase 9 is Double Standard. Homelander, Justice Served. Black Noir, back to Handy 3. Is that what it says? Or Hanoi. Back to Hanoi 3. I had to scroll in there, my old age. In my eyes. The Deep, Gods and Dolphins. Let me see. A-Train, Into the Multiverse. Probably trying to spoof on the Flash there and going into the Speed Force. The Seven Forever. Firecracker, God Help Me. A Dark and Stormy Night. Teenage Kicks, Ditch Day. G3 G-Man. That was Phase 9. And finally, Phase 10. Firecrackers, A Christmas Wish. Silent Vengeance, Reloaded 3. Let There Be Night. Teenage Kick, Sex Ed, The Guardians of Godolkin, Flipped, Speedwalkers 2, Mall Race, G-Men, Days from the Future. So you see a lot of spoofs on here on Marvel and DC movies as well, and it seems like they're going to get Ryan into movies as well. And they were working on his script for his one movie. That's when he was messing with the director and that kind of stuff, which he didn't want to do. So that was very interesting. They did that spoof on that. I thought it was pretty funny.
And when they did the flipped thing and they brought that up, they eventually had Kate and Sam from Gen V come out, and then they like presented and talked about their movie a little bit. You know, she talks about she's a sorority girl, he's a nerd, Sam is, and all that kind of stuff. So, you know, they're officially accepting that Guardians of Godolkin kind of thing now. Vought just realized that they could market them, obviously, and that's what they're doing. We don't really hear anything about, you know, Monroe or the girl that can shrink or grow larger, or who is the other one? I know the guy with the magnetism, Andre, was in there. But he's obviously passed. So I don't know.
The actor,
in real life. So I don't know if they'll just have him like kind of mysteriously be experimented on or something, kind of die off screen or something. They could always do, because we knew his father was like having that issue with his powers where it was causing him to potentially, you know, die in the future. I don't know if they'll do that in the show or what, but I'm trying to remember who was the
it was Andre, Emma, Jordan, and Marie.
Jordan, yes.
Yeah, the ones that got blamed for it, while Kate and Sam were the real people who got the massacre out at that thing, but they got blamed for it, yeah. So,
and I mean, Jordan, Andre, and Marie, those were like some of the top 5 students at Godolkin University, so based on their ranks, so that, you know, they kind of just got swept under the rug, and obviously we kind of saw that with Golden Boy kind of losing it. That basically same thing, they just kind of swept that underneath the rug. But yeah, it seems like they're going to put their spin on that, and I'm really interested to see what they do with Gen V going forward based off of that, you know.
Especially those 4. I wonder if they're going to show up this season at all and help them out, or we're not going to see them until Gen V season 2 possibly, or season 5 of The Boys. But I feel like, you know, especially with her taking Homelander's blast, with Marie taking his blast, they have to tap into her to help at some point, and it seems like she's pretty on par with Newman as well, from the conversation that her and Newman had. So
very similar, if not the same powers, you know. And we know Newman's like basically invincible for whatever reason. They threw acid on her, and it just ruined her jacket.
To the head.
Yeah, and also, it did nothing. So like maybe that's the same thing with Marie. I'm not sure, but yeah, I mean, Newman's powers, they seem very interesting. They're not the same as her daughter's, we'll say that. That's very scary, her daughter's powers, what she kind of turned in with the mouth tentacles and everything like that. So, yeah, I'm really curious to see what they do with Gen V moving forward into season 2.
And then going forward with VotCon, we kind of see where there's, you know, Cameron Coleman thinks he's bigger than he is. You know, the conversation between him and the Deep, that conversation with Ashley, she was kind of his, you know, submissive in their relationship, and because she's no longer in charge, you know, he's kind of going forward. So we see this unlikely alliance between A-Train and Ashley moving forward. So basically after that interaction, you know, she kind of goes into helping A-Train because A-Train thinks that Sage is onto him for that tape of the Starlighters, to change that what happened with at Homelander's trial verdict. So she helps, you know, basically frame Cameron Coleman, who's kind of that Fox News type reporter, the way they brought him off to be. You see Ashley outside of the room, kind of, you know, I got revenge type of thing on him. But then you get that Homelander speech to basically the 7 plus the 2 Guardians of Godolkin as well, telling them basically we're at war. You're no longer beloved celebrities. You're wrathful gods. With Sam asking Homelander, well, how do we know? He's like, well, you'll know when we need to do this. And basically, Homelander's at war, and their first thing is basically take out Cameron Coleman for his betrayal, his supposed betrayal of the Homelanders, or Homefront, where they're called. So that was interesting to see how the episode ended.
Yeah, and I think that the weirdest thing to me is obviously I think Sister Sage knows that A-Train is responsible for it, right? Like,
do you think she 100% knows, or she has a strong suspicion?
In that universe, if she's the smartest person in the world, there is no way that she doesn't know, right? Because like there was a line that she said to him where it was like something like, and I may not be saying it right, but it was something like this. Isn't it just amazing that that information ran out of that department?
Yes,
And yeah, and it's like, okay, well, who is the one person with powers that are super speed? Oh, it's A-Train. So obviously it's not the Deep, right? Like, I know that was like the Deep's department, I believe, like he had oversight over that or something, but at the end of the day, it's like, it's not the Deep, and it's like, they know that Black Noir is not Black Noir anymore, and it's like somebody else, but like, I don't think it'll be him, but it's like the Deep and A-Train, they're the ones that have kind of been there all along. With Homelander on the 7, while they've gone and added Firecracker and Sister Sage, and then they've got the Black Noir replacement, and they're missing the 7th member. So because he says, Homelander does, that he's supposedly waiting on Ryan. So I feel like that's kind of one of those things where it's almost obvious, like, that it's A-Train for her. But we also saw that she was a little bit frustrated with Homelander when he killed that young girl that was working in that department that didn't even, she just said, well, Starlight came, like Heat Vision, and it was like, well, didn't you want to hear what came out of her mouth? And it was like, yeah, maybe we should have, but oh well, Homelander's like, obviously it's been stomped out now, but yeah, I mean, I think she knows that the leak is A-Train. Like, it's got to be, right? Like, he's become an informant for Mother's Milk and the boys. So. And
you can feel, too, there's a little bit of distrust between her and Homelander now. And you can tell the divide, because there already was the divide between her and Firecracker already, because the way Firecracker treats her and the things that she says to her. And you can tell that divide between her and Sage and Firecracker are growing, because there were a couple of things I think said this episode too as well, or just some of the looks also. So it does seem like that. I don't know. I think Sister Sage is kind of playing possibly the long game here, in manipulating multiple people in this thing, because I think the whole thing between her and Deep are also something that she will manipulate, because now that he knows that. When she doesn't have a lobotomy, she's her, but when she does, she's more susceptible to him. So I wonder if she's doing that to kind of control him as well.
Yeah, it makes me question if she's playing a long game with Homelander too, right? Like, I feel like she's manipulating Homelander, one of those, like, he thinks I'm on his side, but in all actuality, I'm doing what I want to do for me, and I'm just using him as my pawn as well.
Especially with her having history with Vought and that kind of stuff, and then her kind of being cast aside, and now she's back, so, yeah.
Definitely.
I almost wonder, too, if there's any ties to her and Stan Edgar.
Oh, that'd be interesting. Yeah.
Like I said, what other secrets does he have? And I'm sure that Newman wasn't his only person that he was keeping tabs on.
Yeah, and I mean, like, that would have been one of those things that I think with Newman, maybe that was like a potential, like, hey, maybe we've got a solution for Homelander, so maybe that's why I'll adopt her and raise her, kind of type of thing.
Yeah.
We saw that there was another head popper, Cindy, right? The one that was in the asylum, but obviously she seemed like she was not mentally all there. We knew that was a problem that happens with Compound V. It happened to Sam. Sam had hallucinations and stuff like that. Thought that people were there, like trying to, that weren't there and stuff. Yeah, the puppets and stuff like that. That was a great scene when he's just ripping the puppets apart and there are people. But yeah, I mean, I think that that's one of those things. Obviously, Sister Sage, being on the 7, we only know that she's incredibly smart at this point, but she hasn't really done anything. I feel like, from a perspective other than like kind of having strategy and controlling the board, I feel like there's some sort of long game that she's playing. She doesn't ever reveal like all of her cards really to everybody. So it seems like even the Deep she's manipulating. The Deep, back on the Deep, you named like 3 projects in the V52 lineup that the Deep had. Like, I don't know why they're going all in on Deep in that universe, but it's just so funny. So
I want to be popular with people besides the whole him and the animals thing, or the sea life thing, if he's still popular outside of that. So so we have 3 episodes left. Dirty Business is this upcoming week, episode 6. Episode 7 is The Insider, so I wonder if A-Train is outed in the episode, or if we find out there's another insider going on, or does he frame Ashley at this point? Do him and Sage come to some kind of understanding, and they start working together, and Ashley's the one outed. And then we have Assassination Run, which could be possibly the end of the election, the presidential inauguration. I wonder if they kind of do a spoof, because we know that this season, we know the whole series of The Boys is a spoof on a lot of things going on in our world today. I wonder if that Assassination Run, if there is a spoof on a major event that happened in real life as well when it comes to elections. And that's all I'm going to say, because we don't go that deep in the show on current political stuff. So I'm interested to see who they're going after. Is it Newman going after the current president? Is it Homelander and then Newman steps in? Are they going to do some kind of replay of things that happened in real life? That's going to be interesting.
Yeah, you know that great scene in the comics where it's like Homelander standing in front of the White House and it's got all the soups like flying above it and stuff like that. They need to do that, and they need to have Butcher and Ryan, like Homelander somehow tries to take the White House or something, and then Butcher gets killed by Homelander finally, and then Ryan lose it and kill Homelander. That would be awesome if they did something like that, in season 5. And I hope they wait and do that in the finale, kind of type of deal. Really wrap up this show. I liked a lot of the fights with Soldier Boy and Homelander and that kind of stuff. But I don't really
Soldier Boy back.
Yeah, I don't really think that they were as good as they could have been, from a fighting perspective on screen. So I would really like to see them really just go all out in season 5. A lot of this show is very bloody and very sexual at times and stuff like that. But I think that I would have just loved to have seen just a little bit more out of the Jensen Ackles playing Soldier Boy fighting Homelander and stuff like that. That's still one of my favorite moments when Butcher, Huey, and Soldier Boy attacked Homelander and almost put him down. So, and that was really a difference maker for Homelander. Then was he was fighting two people there that know how to fight that had superpowers, right? And that was something that Homelander never fights anybody that's in his league, let alone knows how to fight. Yep. So, if Butcher ever trains Ryan how to fight, then that might be a really deadly thing for Homelander in the future. So,
or any of those other babies that we saw in earlier seasons as well. So,
yeah.
Like I said, I still think Stan Edgar has more stuff that we don't know about, and whether it's revealed this season or next season. I also wonder too, are we going to see anything with Queen Maeve? We know she's still out there. We know that she was pretty strong as well. Right now she's living her life and hopefully she's happy, but I wonder if we get any kind of appearance from her this season or next season, especially with the whole Wrathful Gods thing that Homelander line said. I wonder if that pulls her out of where she's currently kind of laying low at.
Yeah, I feel like they shouldn't just be done with her character, but it does kind of feel like after that finale of that one season, I guess it was season 3, where, she jumps out the window and grabs Soldier Boy and he takes her powers because he powers up and everything like that. I kind of feel like maybe we may not see her, but maybe once or twice more, and it would be kind of brief, It would be interesting if she came back and then was like, hey, I lost my powers for a really long time, and then they just kind of came back or something, Yeah,
because we know that Kimiko came back eventually after her blast from Soldier Boy. So,
yeah.
So that's it for The Boys this week. We'll probably be doing actually, it's 4th of July weekend, so we might double up on episode 6 and 7 the week after.
Yeah.
Because, that probably makes more sense with it being a holiday weekend here in the U.S. Let's go on to the news. So let's start with the DC news. Lanterns. Via Variety, HBO has officially picked up Lanterns, the first live-action series created expressly for DC Studios under co-chairman, co-CEOs James Gunn and Peter Safran. The series has been has been given an 8-episode straight-to-series order by HBO, with Chris Mundy serving as showrunner and executive producer. Damian Lindelof and Tom King as co-writers. The 8-episode drama follows new recruit Jon Stewart and Lantern legend Hal Jordan, two intergalactic cops drawn into a dark, Earth-based mystery as they investigate a murder in the American heartland. Now, this is exactly what we wanted to see with, that buddy cop movie that we wanted to see with Star-Lord and Nova. But it looks like we're getting that with Jon Stewart and Hal Jordan instead.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, which I mean, so overdue on having Jon Stewart. Love Jon Stewart. He is one of my favorite Green Lanterns. Really stoked about this Lantern series. It was going to be 8 episodes, right?
Yep.
Um,
8 episodes on HBO.
Yep. So, I'm not the biggest fan of Hal Jordan, but I think he's one of the most popular, most well-known Green Lanterns like
Yeah.
ever. Obviously we've got Guy Garner. Nathan Fillion is going to be that. I think he's going to be appearing in the new Superman movie. It's been mentioned, so I'm sure he'll make his appearance in the Lantern series. With those three, I'm hoping that show. Honestly, we need a good Lantern series. It needs to run for 7, 8, 10 seasons, and they need to go through all the Lantern Corps, all the way from the blue lanterns, the red lanterns, the yellow lanterns, the orange lantern. They need to do everybody, kind of go to the Indigo tribe, just kind of play through all that. I would love to see them just kind of flush out a lot of good characters. It's going to be a very expensive show, I feel like, because CGI and stuff like it. Yeah, I mean, you're dealing with a lot of constructs and stuff like that, so you got to do CGI. But I mean, honestly, it would be so awesome. It's going to be a great like space cop show, and yeah, I mean, that's just something that I think DC's really never really jumped on, which is the Lantern kind of lore and all that kind of stuff. There's just so much they can do with the Lanterns. So
I wonder if we're going to see what's it called, OA, their headquarters.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, we're going to see that at all.
Oa has the Guardians on it, so I would assume that they'll probably, they're obviously not the same, but the Guardians kind of remind me a little bit of like the Watchers almost in a way, from Marvel, but they're obviously not the same. But they basically formed the Green Lantern Corps and made them, and then assigned lanterns to each, we'll call it precinct, throughout the galaxy and stuff like that. And obviously there's some places they don't go and stuff like that, like where the Orange Lantern is and stuff like that. But yeah, I mean, there's so much story that they can tell, and they don't need to just focus on one lantern. Like Jon Stewart, love Jon Stewart. I'm hoping that they kind of kill Guy Gardner off like early on. I'm not a big Guy Gardner fan, but that's just me. But yeah, I mean, it would be really interesting if they killed him off and had his ring go to like Jon Stewart or something like that, So I'm hoping that they really do a lot with that show. I'm very excited for it. Yeah, I'm so excited for it. So
we have some Superman news. Frank Grillo will appear as Rick Flag Sr. in Superman. Grillo was spotted on set shooting scenes for the film. So
interesting.
We're doing that more live action crossover from Creature Commandos cartoon into live action. So the Penguin, via Jeff Snyder, Robert Pattinson is reportedly set to appear as the Batman in the series. That'd be interesting.
That would be interesting.
Yeah.
I'm curious. How many episodes do we know? How many episodes that's going to be?
I don't. I'll see if I can find some stuff for next week or next stream, because I don't know how many episodes it will be, but I won't be surprised if it's around the 8-episode mark too as well for the Penguin.
I mean, obviously that movie, the Batman movie, was very grounded, but I think this is going to be a very grounded show, right? Like this is going to be kind of like the mob war in Gotham between the Penguin and others, and with there being like a power vacuum and people trying to fill that after that first movie. So it'd be really cool to see what they do with that. I know that's not really technically in James Gunn's universe. It's kind of off on its own, but I hope they continue to do more with the Penguin. Yeah, DC Elseworld. So I'm hoping that like they kind of like we get that second Batman movie, and then they continue to make maybe like more of that, because honestly, that's a great universe. I love the Matt Reeves stuff.
Yes.
I love that first movie. So I just hope they go forward with it, to be honest.
I'm not saying that Robert Pattinson is my favorite Batman, but that movie is my favorite Batman movie.
Yeah. So. Yeah, I mean, I think he's my favorite Batman. I wasn't a big fan of Bale, personally. I like those movies, but I don't really like Christian Bale as Batman. I don't really like Michael Keaton as Batman. I think Pattinson did a great job with that. I'm curious to see what they do with that second movie. I'm really looking forward to that.
With the Riddler or the Joker, and who else they bring in.
Yeah, and I mean, like, first time ever, I feel like, in a Batman movie where we get the Joker teased, and then we don't really get to see much of him, and we don't really get to hear much out of him, and it was like a very brief thing. So it's like, obviously, I think the Joker's coming. It's just we don't know when we'll actually get the Joker at this point.
I wonder if we're going to see a Poison Ivy in that universe or a Harley Quinn in that universe. I wonder, I'm mixed on seeing Bane again. We've seen Bane twice already in Batman movies. He was in the Clooney one, and he was in the Bale one. I did like Tom Hardy's portrayal of Bane. I like that. I wouldn't mind seeing another Mr. Freeze again. I'm trying to think what other villains I'd want to see.
No Arnold Schwarzenegger though this time.
I'm trying to think what other villains I wouldn't mind seeing at the Batman side.
I'd like to see Hush. I think that would be a good, kind of villain, especially with the whole stuff that they've done in that universe. I really would like to see them in a third Batman movie with Pattinson build up to the Court of Owls. I think it plays into everything that they're doing. Basically, like all that money that was put aside in the first movie by Thomas Wayne that was basically being used by the mob, being used by the cops and everything, where they were just siphoning money out of it. They could play into that in the second movie with Hush, because, he's basically like changing his appearance, like doctoring himself up and everything like that, so they can build into that, with that. And then by the third movie, they could eventually just fall onto, hey, well, Bruce, like, we've got the Court of Owls here. They've been watching you this whole time. They know about your escapades. Like, they are the ones that have, and it's like you're fighting a bunch of, like, faceless people. These are Gotham's rich and powerful. Like, that they are, but you're also rich and powerful. What's your next move, kind of type of thing. And it'd be like him fighting for the heart and soul of Gotham, trying to, like, fight the rich and wealthy as somebody who's rich and wealthy. It'd be kind of interesting.
It'd be fun to see that tease in the second movie, and that's the basis of the third movie. For the cap on the trilogy type of thing.
Yep.
Because we've seen Catwoman now, like, what, 4 or 5 times? Because we had Michelle Pfeiffer. We had Halle Berry.
Yeah, and she had that. I was gonna say she had that Catwoman movie that is. It wasn't great, but I mean it wasn't bad either. It's just weird, but yeah.
Zoe Kravitz in the Pattinson movie, last movie. And then we had in the Bale series we had what's the actress name? I'm forgetting her name.
Oh, not Anne Hutch.
Anne Hathaway.
Anne Hathaway. Thank you.
We have like 4 Catwoman now, right?
Yeah.
I missed anybody else?
I mean, there's, like, obviously I think some older ones from TV shows and stuff. Like what was her name? Like Julie Newmar or something like that. But like I hate to say this, but like I think that I didn't like the Catwoman, like Anne Hathaway and the Christian Bale version of Batman stuff, like from the more recent stuff. But I really like the dynamic in the Batman movie of Zoe Kravitz and Christian Bale, Pattinson, excuse me. Yeah, so like I thought that they really had a really good dynamic together between Batman and Catwoman. So that was great. Hoping we see more of her in that second movie. I don't think we will. It seems like they kind of sent her off and she'll kind of be off. She'll probably come back maybe for a third movie. I think that would be great, I would hope so. But I don't know if they'll immediately have her come back after that ending where she is like basically telling him, hey, I'm gonna leave, like you should come with me, kind of type of thing. Think about it, the bat and the cat kind of type of thing, and he's like, no, I gotta stay here. And so yeah, I hope she comes back. She's honestly one of my favorite Catwoman castings, so I thought she did a good job.
And I'm not too keen on Harvey Dent again. We kind of seen him twice now, in the Batman movies. The one thing I'm sad that Nolan didn't get a fourth movie in that universe. I would love to see Joseph Gordon-Levitt take up the mantle, whether it's Batman or Nightwing. I would love to see a fourth movie on that and the rebuild of Gotham after what happened with Bane and the League of Shadows. But I also wouldn't mind seeing in this new Pattinson series if they kind of do a Robin or a Nightwing in this series as well. at some point. So
yeah, and the interesting thing is in that first movie, that kid that was with that gang that was going to beat up that old man, and then Batman steps out of the shadows in the beginning of that movie. I'm pretty sure that kid played Robin in the Titan show at one point. So very funny there. Very weird how they did that, but yeah, I hope that they build up to that. I know that they're talking about it in the DCU, not in the elsewhere or Elseworld stuff, but they're talking about in the DCU potentially doing like a Batman and Damian Wayne kind of type of thing, which
is that the Brave and the Bold one, possibly?
Yeah. So if they do that, there's a lot of Robins that they kind of skip between there. I mean, there's been tons of Robins. There's been Dick Grayson, there's been Tim Drake, there's been Jason Todd, there's been Stephanie Brown, there's been Damian Wayne. I mean, you've got a ton of Robins there, and all those that I mentioned before, Damian basically came before him for the most part. So it's like, you could have Damian kind of and just skip all those, but I don't want to see him skip Dick Grayson, like I feel like he's a great character, and he's honestly one of my favorite Robins besides Damian. So
wasn't there a villain blasphemy Todd too in the Batman universe?
Yeah, I mean, so Jason Todd becomes Red Hood.
Okay, that's what it is. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. So he eventually he's killed by Joker and is brought back by the Lazarus Pit. And all that kind of stuff.
That'd be good to see too. Is have Red Hood as on in the series too. So that'll be. We haven't seen that one at all. So.
Yeah. And funny enough, you got Jensen Ackles that voices Batman in a lot of animated stuff that people do want to be Batman. I would like him to be Batman, just to be honest. But he also voiced Red Hood at one time in some of the animated stuff, so it's very interesting. But
don't steal Ackles from me. I know it's never going to happen, but I've always wanted Jensen. I've always wanted Jensen Ackles. Well, actually, Jensen Ackles, I wanted in Marvel in something. I just didn't know what until I saw him as Soldier Boy, and then as Soldier Boy, I'm just like, you know what? He would play the perfect Tony Masters in the MCU if they ever did Tony Masters. Properly, and did went away from the Taskmaster Protocol and Antonio and all that kind of stuff. But before him, I always wanted to be Jeffrey Dean Morgan. I was like, you know what? You combine what's to do with the Negan? You combine Negan. You combine his character from Watchmen, and you combine his character from Rampage into one person. That would be a great Tony Masters as well with Jeffrey Dean Morgan. He's old enough too to where if they made him older in the MCU, that JDR could still play it, but I'm not going to go down that rabbit hole again.
I mean, you put the mask on, right? Like it's like you just have somebody else do, all the other stuff.
Well, even if you show him as a shield person where he injects himself in one of the runs, I think it's the latest run when they show him, he kind of looks older in that series. So you could even have him play, do some stuff from that series of the older of an older Taskmaster as well. Remind me next episode too, Extreme, to show you the statue that I got. So a buddy of mine saw in that comic store in Omaha, and last time I went to Omaha, I finally got it from him. I got to show you this Taskmaster statue that I got now.
Awesome. Yeah, so funny enough, just throwing this out there about Jensen Ackles, I think you've watched some of Supernatural, haven't you?
I've watched parts of it, but guess what? I put it in my Netflix list, and I'm going to watch it from the beginning, because I've only seen bits and pieces. I never watched all of it. And so I'm going to watch that. I'm actually going to watch that before I watch Lost. Because Lost are in my list. So I'm going to watch Supernatural like a season at a time first.
It's going to take forever. I think some of the seasons are 23 episodes, 15 seasons. But Jeffrey Dean Morgan is Jensen Ackles' father in that, which is very cool. And he was also Thomas Wayne, Jeffrey Dean Morgan, and So, or was it in the Affleck? Was he Affleck's?
Oh, Affleck, you're right.
Yeah. So Affleck. Him and Maggie, I think her name's Lauren Cohen from Walking Dead. Yeah. So two Walking Dead actors were Thomas and Martha Wayne. So interestingly, I find that funny. So I would love to see Jensen Ackles be Batman, but then they also in Supernatural they have an episode where he gets a lucky rabbit's foot and everything's going Dean's way, and he throws a remote at somebody and hits him in the head and like it knocks him out or something, and he looks at the camera and he goes, "I'm Batman," and like so I just think about that every time like I think of him like playing Batman. So I would love to see Jensen Ackles as Batman or something. I mean, obviously I can't get enough of him. I love him as an actor. He's one of my favorite actors, right up there with RDJ. But yeah, I'll take him anywhere. Taskmaster, Batman, I don't care.
You know what would be great too? So I'll say one more thing about Taskmaster, and I'll move on to Star Wars news.
Mm-hmm.
But the first Deadpool movie, Jinx's character, or Ajax has Francis. That was supposed to be Taskmaster, but Fox didn't have the rights to it, so that's why they have Ajax/Francis, because they couldn't get Taskmaster. Now think about Ackles versus Ryan Reynolds, or them in some movie together being Deadpool and Taskmaster.
That would be cool.
Yeah.
That'd be awesome. That'd be really awesome.
So, anyways, moving on. Star Wars news. Andor, director Alonso Ruiz Palacios, I'm sorry I butchered that, reveals that Ben Mendelsohn will be in season 2.
Okay.
So,
interesting.
Yep, the Solo Ray film that's coming up for Star Wars Universe via Daniel RPK. The Solo Ray movie will begin filming this September. Lucasfilm is currently casting for her 2 students and the villain. So,
interesting.
That's be interesting. On to Marvel news. Well, MCU news, because Star Wars is Marvel. Finkel Einhorn. Brave New World. There's a rumor that Giancarlo Esposito will be playing a version of Bushman. Which, if you see the descriptions they have out there about him and that kind of stuff, it does kind of line up. Even though they say it'll be a new character, it could be a new spin on Bushman as well.
It's just sad because I feel like it's gonna be a one and done for him, right? Like, you know, and he's a great actor, and it's like so many people wanted Esposito in, you know, so many different roles in the MCU, and it's like we get him in a role like that. He's such a fantastic actor, you know.
Remind me of Luke Cage. Was that Bushman or Bushmaster? The one Jamaican guy. The voodoo guy.
I think it was Bushmaster, wasn't it?
Okay, I got to look that up now. So it's like, do we already have that?
I never finished the Luke Cage show, to be honest. I don't know why, but like I struggled to finish.
It was Bushmaster, so sorry.
Yeah,
my bad.
yeah. I struggled to finish that show. I don't know why, but I watched Iron Fist like 3 times, and I think it's because the first time I watched it, I was like, "This is not that good," but I'm gonna keep watching it. And then I like watched it all the way through the second or third season, whenever it was done, and then I was like, you know what? I'm gonna give this another try at some point. I was like, because I didn't really like the actor that played Danny Rand, and yeah, I mean, like I went back, watched it again, watched it a third time, and yeah, obviously I've watched that Daredevil show a dozen times through, you know, but that and Jessica Jones, I could watch those on repeat. Jessica Jones was great.
I can't wait for Kristen Ritter to come back.
Yeah, she was good. I'm hoping that they kind of continue that stuff very similar for her, that kind of same universe kind of type of thing. I hated God, what was I do not remember. Trisha's name is Hellcat.
Yeah.
Is that her name? I think. Yeah. In comics. But yeah, I didn't really like what they did with Trish in that show. I thought it was kind of weird, you know. But yeah, Jessica Jones was great. Her and the Purple Man in that first season was one of the strongest Marvel Netflix,
Kilgrave?
I think, seasons. Or Kilgrave, yeah, excuse me. Yeah, but his name is the Purple Man, is what they call him as well. But yeah, I mean, he was a great villain, and he would kill me because I love that scene where he gets mad at somebody in the park and he's like, throw that hot coffee in your face, and we're just wham, just throws coffee in their face. So yeah, great villain and crazy villain. So I'm hoping that we see more of what is her name? Jessica Ritter?
Kristen Ritter.
Or Kristen Ritter, thank you.
Yes.
All right. Yeah, so I'm hoping we see more of Kristen Ritter in the future.
Namor news, via Daniel RPK, a Namor project is currently in the works at Marvel Studios. I don't know if this will be a series or a movie. But yeah, I want to see more Namor. I loved his portrayal in the MCU and Wakanda Forever. and it seems like all that chatter, whatever happened with Tenoch Huerta, that chatter has gone away. You haven't heard anything else about it, so yeah, I want to see him back, pending anything else that's going on, but I'd love to see him back as Namor. And I loved how the ending of Wakanda Forever, with the whole him saying, kind of playing the cards there between him and Shuri and that kind of stuff, and the whole thing on the wall that he was drawing. So
yeah, I mean, the Wakandans better be happy that fight ended when it did, because they were about to get torn up by those Atlanteans. They were like backed into a corner at the end of that movie when
it was game over.
when Namor and Shuri kind of like came to an agreement and then stopped the fight. So yeah, very, very interesting. I'd be curious to see what they do moving forward with Namor.
I still feel like that was a test. The whole thing was a test to see if he had a land ally that he could trust, and that was as powerful, or that could be on their level. I still feel like the whole thing was a test. So.
One of those, like, hey, like, our commonality is vibranium, basically. Like, we're from the ocean, you're from the land. We're the only two people that have vibranium. Like, can we be friends? Kind of type of thing. Yeah. And
should we keep it out of hands of people like Val or other people as well? So. Speaking of Wakanda, Eyes of Wakanda, via Daniel RPK, Achilles will make his MCU debut in Eyes of Wakanda. The series will have multiple Greek gods in it, which makes sense because we saw the whole pantheon of the gods in Love and Thunder. And we know that I think Bass was there as well. And so I won't be surprised if, of the history of Wakanda, and we went on with all the Greek mythology, that kind of stuff, what crossover they had and how they interacted, during that history.
I hated Zeus in Love and Thunder. Man, I hated what they did with Zeus. It's so bad. So bad. But yeah, I mean, like, I think that all kind of sets up too that we got to get Hercules at some point, right? Like, that's got to be down the road. Hopefully if they do another Thor movie, we get a Hercules versus Thor fight.
Well, I do have a Thor 5 rumor coming up, so.
Ooh, okay.
Yes. We'll talk about that then. Hold on. Black Panther 3, since we're on the Wakanda theme here, Letitia writes on The View, teases about Black Panther 3. There's a lot coming up. There's also been some chatter that basically Shuri and Okoye raise and Nakia basically raise little T'Challa, and basically by the end he gets the mantle. I just wonder what villains they're gonna do now. Are they going to do another internal conflict? Maybe we get full Manape with M'Baku possibly. Or what other conflict can they do? Also, too, I wonder if we'll see any of Talokan in this as well. Because you think that there's a change in power in Wakanda, that Shuri and Namor might be in some kind of communication on that.
Does a young T'Challa have to fight for the mantle, though? I mean, obviously you can't fight some of these warriors for the mantle as a child, so it's like, obviously it seems like Shuri is holding the mantle at this point. It seems like everybody's kind of consolidated and kind of, Wakanda's kind of been pulled together. It seemed like in that first Black Panther movie, it seemed like everybody was kind of like, hey, we want to be the Black Panther, kind of challenging for that role. But did they just kind of give it to him naturally, you think? Kind of one of those birthright kind of things?
Yeah, or? I think back to when T'Chaka and T'Challa, we never really got a clue on how T'Challa got it from T'Chaka, because T'Chaka stayed king, but he could have handed the mantle over to T'Challa when he came of age. And I think when the right to become king, I think, is more important in the challenge than the actual Black Panther. I think the king can probably decree who the Black Panther is while they're still king. Because notice that we didn't get the challenge for T'Challa until T'Chaka passed away and when he was going to ascend to the throne. So I think at a change of leadership is when that happens. So I think with Shuri, I think with her, she might hand over the mantle to little T'Challa and possibly stay as queen and in charge of technology. But I think maybe that once that he ascends to the throne is when a challenge might have to happen. So
it's a shame that we lost Angela Bassett in that second Wakanda Forever movie. She was such a phenomenal actress, and she's great.
Yeah,
and she in AHS plays the Voodoo Queen, And just like, man, like she was phenomenal in that role, and I see like a very similar kind of typecast there with her in the Wakanda Forever and in the Black Panther movie. But man, I didn't want to see her go. Like she is one hell of an actor. So
she's phenomenal in anything she plays in.
Oh yeah, most definitely.
She's phenomenal. Yeah.
Yeah.
Deadpool Wolverine news. Actually, let me go back to Black Panther 3 first. So there's been some chatter both ways that Black Panther 3 could be before or after Secret Wars.
Huh.
So yeah, I don't know but there's been chatter both ways I've seen online.
Interesting.
Deadpool and Wolverine. There's a rumor going on that Wesley Snipes reportedly plays a supporting role as Blade in Deadpool and Wolverine instead of just a cameo. So
Okay.
there's also, you see, like, there's like that whole going around where there's like the new Avengers flag that has like the Anarchy A, where they're called the Anarchy Avengers.
Mm-hmm.
I wonder if he ends up being a part of that in this film with that team up. Also, too, did you see the latest TV spot?
For Sabretooth?
Yeah, it looks like we're going to get that Sabretooth from the Fox universe.
Mm-hmm.
Not Logan, that was Logan, that was Days of Future Past. Not the Liev Schreiber one. But we're going to get the one from the original Fox movies. And it looks like there's going to be a fight between finally him and Sabretooth. So Logan and Sabretooth.
Which I mean, physically speaking, I liked the look of that Sabretooth better than I liked the other one. I just kind of liked the attitude of the second one a little bit better than the attitude of the first one. But, if I could push those two together and make one Sabretooth, I totally would.
It's like give Liev Schreiber the look and the feralness of the one from the original Fox trilogy, but then keep everything else that he was the same.
Yeah, and I mean, like, we see in that TV spot, he's got a full-grown beard and everything like that, like he didn't have, so he's probably been in the void for a while and everything like that. But yeah, I mean, that's pretty exciting. Not only do we get Wolverine back in the Deadpool movie, but we get to see a Deadpool and a Wolverine and Sabretooth fight. Like, that's awesome.
It's like they're filling all the gaps that those movies had that we didn't get to see.
Yeah, I mean, I know that Kevin Feige worked on some of the original X-Men movies, like way back in the day. I think there were a lot of things that he didn't really see happen that he wanted to happen, and now I feel like he kind of gets to, him and Ryan Reynolds kind of get to correct a lot of the wrongs that I think were made with a lot of the older X-Men movies.
So keep that thought, because my next thing here is from the official Marvel podcast, which I launched this week. Kevin Feige has hinted that Deadpool and Wolverine will appear in more MCU projects. The quote was basically saying, seeing them interact with TVA agents and people familiar with the organization from Loki season 1 and season 2 is a thrill. The combination of all those different worlds, all those different flavors, and perhaps even a few more that people won't know until they see it, or until they see the movie, it's a thrill. So it sounds like they're very impressed with Deadpool and Wolverine and what it's going to do, and that's why I think they still want Sean Levy to direct the Secret Wars movie. So.
Well, it seems like there's a lot of characters in it, and it's hard to juggle a lot of characters and give them, like, I think, a lot of screen time. And I think the screen time in a lot of movies like that really matters on what you do with it, with each individual character. It's like we talk about this with animated shows, right? Like, one of the best parts about watching, like, Earth's Mightiest Heroes or another animated Marvel show is the fact that they'll have 12 characters that are all juggling, doing stuff, and it's like jumping between them, and they're all working together, and then they're separated, and then they're fighting, and then they're back together and stuff. Everybody gets like a good amount of screen time, and that's so hard for them to do in a movie. Like, that's what worries me about Secret Wars with that rumor that they've got 60 people. Yeah, you know, like, how are you going to juggle that? Like, that movie almost feels like it should be like 3 hours, right? Like, you know, go on forever. And that's one of those things where, like, you don't want to see people, like 60 characters, just show up and talk for 3 hours. You want to see them all fight, and that's why, like, that in-game battle is so, I guess, incredible, is even though there's like some little mistakes and some little things that they, you know, this person was standing here and then they were over here or something that are a little bit odd and stuff like that in that final battle. It's so hard to like choreograph and get all that right, where, you know, you've got so many people that show up all at once and are fighting. And So for them to do what it seems like they're doing with this Deadpool movie, where they've got all these old characters and all this kind of stuff, they've got the TVA, Sabretooth, Toad, Cassandra Nova, they've got all these different mutants that are going to appear, Pyro, stuff like that. Like, it's got to be, if Marvel is this happy, they've got to have done really well with this movie, with sharing that screen time with everybody.
There's also been chatter too that we're going to get an in-game like type of style thing in here as well.
Kind of like a final battle kind of type deal. Okay.
Yeah. And again, I hope they don't say that Doom was the one manipulating Cassandra Nova, the Void, Kang, that kind of stuff. But we'll see what happens.
Just leave Doom alone for a while,
Eternals news, via Alex from Cosmic Circus. He does his Q&A stuff. And one of the things out there was Eternals 2. It was being developed, but has now been postponed since it's not a priority at the moment. I almost don't know if we need an Eternals 2. I wouldn't mind seeing the follow-up with Star Fox and Pip, and what happens to the team. But I also would rather see some of those characters in other projects. Like we know that Cersei at one point's an Avenger. We'd like to see what happens with Dane Whitman and / Black Knight. Do we really want to see what happens with the rest of them? Kind of thing.
Yeah. I mean, I think there are two pathways for them, right? Like, we know Star-Lord is part Celestial and he's on Earth. So why not make a U-turn, go back to Earth, and bring him into an Eternals 2 movie and then do that? Or, it seems like they're in space now. They're talking to Star Fox and Pip the Troll and everything, and it seems like they're getting ready to go after to try and free the Eternals that were taken by Arishem. So why not bring in the new Guardians of the Galaxy and bring them into the Eternals 2 movie and make it like a team-up movie between both, with Rocket leading the new Guardians or something, and you don't even have to bring Star-Lord into it. But it's just interesting because he's part Celestial, so you could do that if you wanted to.
Well, you could have a cameo from Star-Lord, and they could call it Eternal Guardians. There you go.
That would be cool. That'd be cool. That'd be awesome.
It's not Guardians of the Galaxy 4. It's not Eternals 2. It's Eternal Guardians. And basically, they're teaming up to save Phastos, Cersei, and Kingo. In which we have Pip the Troll, we have Star Fox, then we have Athena and Makari and Druid. As well. And then maybe they go to Star-Lord for just to kind of see, if he can help them. Maybe we see like Kingo's valet and Sprite find Star-Lord, like, hey, we know you're part Celestial. Can you give us any advice or how to communicate with your team? Somehow he gets in contact with the Guardians. The Guardians come in and swoop up the valet and Sprite, and they, a little scene there from Star-Lord. They go off, to find the rest of them, and there we go. I don't know. So.
And you got Star-Lord, Peter Quill's on Earth, right? He's hanging out with his grandfather, I believe it was.
Yep.
Like, he's older now. I'm not trying to sound terrible here, but let's imagine his grandfather passes. What's holding him to Earth anymore, right? Like, he came back to Earth to kind of like spend time with his grandfather, get to know him, get to kind of know a little bit about his family, get to kind of get back to a normal life. But like, let's imagine that his grandfather passes. I honestly think that could be one of those things where it's like, hey, let's get back in the saddle, let's get back off Earth and go out there and go do, more Star-Lord things. So.
He also want to stay too, because he knows maybe he's like out the research and the impact of Ego's things on Earth. Maybe he's got other family in Missouri that he's wanting to meet and hang out with. That whole neighbor kid that he mentions, that could lead to something else too. So I don't think we need him for the entire movie. I think in the beginning to kind of, guidance or help communicate with the Guardians, that kind of stuff, and then he kind of just stays on Earth. He's like, I'll be here, or he finds some way where he can track like Arishem or whatever along with Star Fox. They communicate at times, but he doesn't need to be that focal point of that movie.
It'd be kind of cool if they did like a second. Let's pretend that the second movie is called Eternal Guardians, right? And the Guardians and the remaining Eternals are captured by Arishem at the end of that movie, and they lose. And like a beacon or something goes back to Earth, and it's like, hey, Sprite, go get Star-Lord. We need your help or something. Yeah, yes. Like we need his help. And then he leaves Earth because he's part Celestial, and like he can break whatever Arishem's doing or something because he's got the light inside him, the spark. I hate that they did all that with Ego being a Celestial, but I mean, at this point, let's use it in the MCU. You know, like why not? So.
I actually like that idea better. Make it a post-credit scene to get him into the next movie. You know, that type of thing. Not have Sprite involved at all, or Star-Lord not until a post-credit scene. But yeah, and just have it focused on the Guardians in space. Because maybe Star Fox, like, I know people that can help us, and they find the new Guardians. They go to Nowhere, wherever the new base is. Because Nowhere was still there. There was a lot of damage there, but Nowhere was still there.
Yeah, I mean, Nowhere's basically become kind of like the home for everybody that doesn't have one. Yeah. Like all the beings from that one world were then brought from the High Evolutionary were then brought to Nowhere, and
that's what what's her name was stayed there to run.
Nebula.
No, Gamora.
Oh,
no, Gamora's off with the Ravagers. Yeah, Nebula. Nebula's there. Yeah. Sorry.
Yeah. So
and then we give Gamora too, because they can pull the Ravagers in to help out too as well. You know, they have a whole team up. So yeah, I like that better.
Yeah, be cool.
Fantastic Four news. Rumor is that Puppet Master will be one of the classic villains featured in the first act of Fantastic Four. And basically this is John Malkovich's character. And honestly, if John Malkovich is Puppet Master, which I thought early on, Natasha Lyonne, right? She's in a secret role. Everyone thinks she's voicing Herbie. What if she's Alicia?
Interesting.
But she could be a little bit too old for Johnny, though. So I don't know if that's going to work, because she's a little older now. So I don't know if she could be Alicia in this one. Yeah, I'm probably going to lean more towards her being Herbie's voice.
Yeah, and I mean, I feel like with Herbie, too, like, Herbie's going to be one of those roles that I feel like is going to be very much like Jarvis, right? Like, they could kind of do something like that. But at the end of the day, it's like, Herbie doesn't, it's not going to become like a Vision like character or anything, so you could just have that, so anybody could kind of voice Herbie, right? Like, you know, in
same thing with Miley Cyrus, right, where they brought her in early, you know, but she wasn't in the last movie because I think scheduling or something else, where she wasn't the voice of their android. So Mole Man will also be in the film. This has to be Paul Walter Hauser. This has to be his role, because the role hasn't been announced yet. Via Nexus Point News, filming will begin July 24th with an expected wrap around December 2024. So they're getting that done pretty quick as far as the production. Filming will take place in London, Montreal, and Dublin. So, from the official Marvel podcast, Kevin Feige has confirmed that Fantastic Four will be a period piece set in the 1960s and set into an alternate universe. That makes sense.
You know, I hate to say this, but like, they've done The Incredibles at Disney, right? And The Incredibles feels very similar to like the Fantastic Four. I mean, you got Jack, that's basically like Franklin Richards. You've got, the only difference is like Mr. Incredible's like the Thing. You know,
Girl's like Mr.
Reed Richards, like Violet's like Sue Storm, and instead of having a hothead guy, you've got a kid that runs at super speed. So I mean, kind of similar, but not really the same. But you know, it feels very much. But they have the Underminer in that, and Mole Man, and it just that I watched The Incredibles recently because. I love The Incredibles, and somebody I know hadn't seen the second one. I was, oh my god, you got to watch the second one, and then I fell asleep during it, which was very sad. But I love that second movie. It was so good. I hated that we had to wait so long on it, but you know, I feel like The Incredibles is almost a great blueprint to do something similar with the Fantastic Four. You know, it's like, it's not, I'm not going to call it like a period piece, but in The Incredibles, it is kind of an older time, right? Like, it feels like it's kind of 50s, 60s, you know, kind of type of thing. So it kind of fits a very similar kind of narrative, I think, as the Fantastic Four. So
I almost feel like if it's a period piece and we're going to see those two classic villains, I almost wonder if they're going to take a page from the cartoon. And where on the cartoon, they're on a one of those talk shows, and they're telling how things came to be, and they're doing flashbacks of Puppet Master, Mole Man, and then they have to face a new villain in that film, whoever that is, Galactus comes or whatever. I think that might be a way where their powers are already established, but they're telling us a story, you know, and maybe they have to do some fight with Galactus, or we get the tease of it because we know Galactus is in the film, and that's how they get into this universe, or some kind of thing opens up where there's an incursion. I don't know. And that's how they come together for Secret Wars, or unless they're going to keep them separate until post Secret Wars. I don't know.
And if they do say Mole Man, right, and it's like a period piece, like let's pretend that they're in the 60s. Mole Man is a great 60s villain, right? Like, and then if they somehow end up in the future, you don't need a Mole Man in the future. You could
Or
do that as
Puppetmaster.
like you
Yeah.
could do that as like those were old villains, like back from a long time ago, like back in the day.
Yep.
So be kind of cool.
Yeah. Kevin Feige also said which project excites him the most. Well, you know, the corporate answer is they're all our babies and we love them all equally. And I'm very excited for Deadpool and Wolverine, and then Agatha All Along, and Captain America Brave New World, and Thunderbolts with an asterisk, and the new Daredevil, and that's true. But if you want the real answer, if we're trying to get real on this podcast, the answer is Fantastic Four. Marvel's betting huge on this film.
Fantastic Four.
Yes.
Interesting.
Wonder Man. From the official Marvel podcast, Kevin Feige teases the upcoming Disney Plus series Wonder Man, starring Yahya Abdul-Mateen II. It's extremely difficult than anything we've done before. Brad Winderbaum will be next week on the official Marvel podcast. And remember, Brad is the head of Marvel Television lineup. So we'll get more stuff on that next week on that one.
And the guy that's playing Wonder Man is the same one that played Black Manta, right?
Correct.
Yeah, I did. Man, he is a phenomenal actor.
Yeah.
Like he did great as Black Manta. You know,
Yep.
It's really sad that Aquaman's not going to need a third movie. Not that I love Jason Momoa so much as Aquaman, but seeing him as Black Manta in 2 movies was just great. I would love to see him kind of come back. You know, even though, like, I mean, in that second movie where Aquaman's like, "Hey, grab my hand," and he's like, "No," and he just like lets himself fall. It is just like the ultimate, like the pride comes before the fall, literally moment, you know.
Do you ever watch like old school wrestling, like in the 80s?
Oh no, I didn't. My dad's super into that. Like years ago, he used to watch a lot of that, like wrestlers talking about like the things that they did and they went through and all the fights and this was supposed to happen and it didn't happen. And so I know a little bit about wrestling. I watched a little bit of it growing up, but yeah, not really my cup of tea per se. But
So back during the 80s, you know, late 70s, early 80s, mid 80s type stuff, before like the whole WWF and that kind of stuff, when they had those different factions and they had the NWA, and they had different territories and that kind of stuff, there was a wrestler called Bruiser Brody.
okay.
And if they ever do a Bruiser Brody film, because he like wrestled with a lot of the old greats, Ric Flair, he wrestled against the Von Erichs, that kind of stuff, had a very tragic death as well. If they ever do a Bruiser Brody movie, Jason Momoa should play him. The hair, this look, that kind of stuff. I could see him being a Bruiser Brody if they ever did a Bruiser Brody film. So
Yeah, man, I don't know why, but I also think of Kane. You remember that dude from wrestling back way back? Like I could see him kind of playing him, but just Jason Momoa couldn't talk. You know what I'm saying? Like because that dude just really didn't talk or say much in wrestling, and Jason Momoa loves to talk. That's like one of his favorite things to do. You know, so he's a very vocal actor. He's very goofy too.
Yeah.
You know, he's very goofy in the Aquaman movies. So
yeah, he can be cool. I don't know. Bruiser Brody had a pretty big personality, but it's not the same as the goofiness that Jason Momoa plays. I could be wrong here, but it's when I know a Bruiser Brody. So
he could play Mankind too, you know, Mr. Sokka. So
Thunderbolts news. Via Daniel RPK, Sentry will be Superman level strong in the Thunderbolts. There's more chatter that the Sentry though in the Thunderbolt has a no kill rule. There will be a clear explanation for why Sentry doesn't kill people. Now, before we judge this almost sounds like Bob Reynolds, the person, doesn't kill. But the Void is when is what makes him kill. So I think that's where it's going. I think that's going to be the explanation is that Bob Reynolds in one hand, the Void in the other, and that's the explanation. I bet it's going to happen.
And we know that the Sentry is basically like he's got like a specialized version of the super soldier serum in the comics. I assume that they're going to do something very similar. And one of the most interesting things was in the Falcon and the Winter Soldier, when John Walker kind of like lost control, he started hearing that high pitch, and it was like he kind of snapped a little bit.
Yeah.
That's all they need to do with this is make it like
they laid the groundwork for it.
Yeah, like they just need to have it be one of those things where it's like a split personality, like Moon Knight kind of, where it's like he just loses it, snaps, and then he's just like a different person. And it's and it'd be one of those things where it's like you're just talking to, say, the Sentry, and then all of a sudden he's the Void and you don't realize it, and he just becomes like very incredibly evil, or he just kills somebody in cold blood for no reason or something. You're like, who is this? And that could be kind of what they do with that character. I would like to see it like that at least. So.
Brave New World, I forgot to mention one thing. It has wrapped photo shoots or reshoots.
Mm-hmm.
So the reshoots that it had is wrapped. Now on to the rumors. And this is where it's mixed news about this. Thor 5 and Black Panther 3 will be after Avengers Secret Wars. But again, I've heard that it could be before as well. So there is conflicting information about that. Now, the other rumor here is Odin and Frigga will return in Thor 5.
Interesting.
Flashbacks?
It's gotta
multiverse?
Be. I mean, it's gotta be flashbacks, right? Like
Hell? Or not Hell, but Valhalla, maybe?
Yeah, but I mean, Odin kind of turned into... I mean, I guess it would be Valhalla, right? Like, Odin kind of turned into that dust and then kind of just disappeared. Frigga, died in, what was it? Thor 2? Dark World, yeah. So, I mean, it's got to be Valhalla. We know that Natalie Portman's in Valhalla as Jane Foster now. We know that... Heimdall, yeah. I was going to say Idris Elba, but it's one of those things where it's definitely there. They presented that at the end of Thor 4 or Love and Thunder, so why not, Like,
and if we go with, more Greek gods and the whole thing with Hercules versus Thor at the beginning before they team up and defeat Hades, possibly. Maybe Hades has some dealing with them being in the afterlife, that kind of stuff, the underworld.
I hope that they're not going to do that, though, if they're in Thor 5, because Thor dies and they welcome him to Valhalla. That would be awful.
What if he doesn't die, though? So remember, too, that, there's ways that they can go back and forth between the underworld and the real world. We've seen that in other Greek mythology movies. So what if somehow this is, I think we talked before where I talked about this could be the whole thing with Hades and... manipulating things and trying to do some stuff, and that's why at first Zeus has to go. Zeus sends Hercules after Thor. They fight. They kind of go to a draw, and they kind of realize, and then maybe Zeus realizes that something else is going on here, or the Pantheon realizes something else is going on here. Zeus in a weakened state. Hades is trying to take over. They have the team up to defeat Hades. In that whole thing, they go to the underworld, which they could get to Valhalla, and we see all the band in Valhalla, possibly. And they have to defeat Hades and make Hades the villain. I think it's a storyline. I can't remember what storyline this was, but I think there is something similar in the Thor comics like this as well. I gotta go look it up, but I remember vaguely something as being familiar, and so they could play on that for the next movie, which I think will be great.
Yeah, and I mean, we've seen Loki pretend to be Odin, so it wouldn't be surprising if somebody else is, making a hallucination or making like a projection or pretending to be pretending to be Odin, so yeah, I mean, they could definitely do a lot of different things with that,
The last thing here is that, according to Deadline, Kevin Feige will return with an eye on a big Sunday presentation at Comic-Con. So Marvel's back this year. From the official horror podcast, Feige also said, we start shooting the Monday after Comic-Con. The day after Comic-Con is the first day of filming of Fantastic Four. So he also talked about Comic-Con on the podcast. So it does sound like Imposter, we're probably going to get Agatha, we're probably going to get Thunderbolts, probably get Brave New World, stuff from there. Maybe Wonder Man. Maybe Daredevil. So there's a lot of projects that we could get some information on that have been shooting at Comic-Con. Daniel RBK also said that he heard that Marvel plans to reveal a lot at Comic-Con this year, possibly even more than D23. So that's all the Marvel news. We have some Percy Jackson universe news.
Ooh.
The Kane Chronicles. Via Nexus Point News, the Kane Chronicles series is in development at Disney Plus. A series adaptation of Rick Riordan's The Kane Chronicles trilogy is in development at Disney Plus, which is home to the sister series Percy Jackson and the Olympians. The series is being described as being set in the world of Percy Jackson, similar to Percy Jackson and the Olympians. Riordan will come on board as writer and executive producer for the series.
Okay.
So there you go.
Cool.
That'd be kind of cool. I have read those books, so I might read those books. I know my son read the Percy Jackson stuff, and I think we have to sit and watch the series still. But I'll see if he wants to read those books too.
The series was, I think, better than the movies. I think Jamie and I and a few others have discussed that a few times. I read some of the books growing up. I read The Lightning Thief, The Sea of Monsters, a few others. I went to Christian schools growing up, and they used to keep the good stuff underneath the tables at the book fairs, and I would go in there and dig underneath the tables, and I found The Lightning Thief, and it was Greek mythology, so they didn't want us buying it, but somehow I managed to get one out at the book fair and buy it, and I read it, and then I went to Barnes & Noble immediately after and bought The Sea of Monsters and everything like that, and I love those books. I love Greek mythology, so they were awesome, and honestly, I think that the TV show, it was really good for what it was. It's not the same as the books, but they do a really good job of sticking to the source and also not really changing too much. But with a lot of things like that, I think that you don't want to just make the book right into a TV show. You want to make things a little different.
Yeah.
So you're not just
voice. Yeah,
exactly. And I think Harry Potter does that too, as a good example. I've never read the books, but I've always heard that the books are not the same as the movies. So
yeah, my wife's she's done both, I think, and now my son's reading the books, and she said the same thing, that they're not the exact same. I don't really pay attention to Harry Potter stuff, so
yeah. So I mean, they're great books. If you get the chance, definitely watch the show. Definitely enjoyed the show. I couldn't really get into the original movies that they made of Percy Jackson and the Olympians. So.
Street Fighter news. Sony has announced that it released Legendary's new Street Fighter movie on March 20th, 2026. The project recently lost its directors, but if they're already making an announcement and when, they must have a replacement in line already to direct the film. So I'm looking forward to that.
Yeah.
The last thing of the news, MonsterVerse. There will be another Godzilla movie that's been announced. It will release on March 26, 2027 in theaters. So I wonder where they're going next. I wonder what the villain's going to be, because now it seems like Godzilla and Kong are on, they're basically have an understanding now. After the past two movies. And I know that they started opening up more of, what's that world called? And they have portals now where they can get there. Hollow Earth.
Yeah.
And I know that they showed that new portions of Hollow Earth can be open now. Have you seen Godzilla X Kong yet?
I haven't. No.
Not quite.
Yeah.
Godzilla X Kong shows a lot of stuff they can do and tied some things together from the previous films, building on Godzilla vs. Kong. So they have some ways they could do that. It'll be interesting to see how they do that going forward. That's all I'll say.
I went to go. I was just gonna say I went to go see that Godzilla movie. It's the one that I think is in all Japanese. I'm trying to remember.
Godzilla -1. That movie is good too. That's
I went to go see that movie, and I don't know. I apparently been doing this a lot, I guess, over the last year. But I fell asleep during that movie, and I was dead asleep. And Godzilla shoots that beam out of his mouth and I woke up during that and almost fell out of my chair. I was like, "What is going on?" I was terrified, and then I was like, "Oh." Yeah, we're watching this movie. But yeah, that movie, what I saw of it, I thought it was kind of a slow burn in the beginning, but man, once they got to Godzilla, it was one of the best scenes of that is when they're in the boat and they're just shooting the gun at him, and he's just like an alligator slithering through the water at him, and everything. Man, that was so good. So,
Later when they try to bomb his mouth.
Yeah, yeah. So I mean,
Kamikaze pilot.
they had a couple of weird scenes in that movie and stuff like that. And they had one scene where it's like the guys in one city where Godzilla appears, and he goes to another city and Godzilla appears there too. And I'm
He's
like,
following him.
yeah, I'm like, man, you got the worst luck in the world, like, dang, like, but yeah, it's not a bad movie from what I remember. I unfortunately slept through part of it, so.
I felt they played well in that guy's guilt and all that kind of stuff, because he was supposed to be a kamikaze pilot. He didn't go to what he's supposed to do in the military. You could tell that played on him through the movie. I thought it was really well done. So yeah, I like that. Another Godzilla movie for a different angle, and I hope they do more stuff like that. And that movie had a very low budget and got a lot of awards too, if I remember correctly. So,
yeah. I don't think they spent a lot of money on that movie at all. So.
No. But yeah, watch Godzilla vs Kong or X Kong. It's a good movie. There's a new person they introduced in the movie that cracks me up. I'll to give you a hint. The one thing I didn't like about the movie, I'll say this now. He's not in the movie. I wonder why they didn't keep Alexander Skarsgård's character in the film. It seemed at the end of Godzilla vs Kong that him and Rebecca Hall's character had a very good thing going on there and rapport there. I wonder why. And I know that he was mad because his brother did the expedition and he got lost, and they all this stuff tried to keep secret from him. But I felt at the end of that movie, I felt they were in a good position for him to come back for this movie. So the nice thing is, though, is that they only brought back 3 people from the previous film. So it's Rebecca Hall, the little girl, and Brian Tree Henry, who plays Fastos.
Okay.
Those 3 are the only ones back from the previous films. I wish they brought Kyle Chandler back, too. I like him as an actor. But they didn't. Neither him or, what's her name, Millie Bobby Brown are in the film. Is the one kid in the film? The guy from Deadpool 2. The kid. He was Fire Fist. Yeah, Fire Fist. He was also in the previous movie too. I'm trying to think, was he in this film or not? I can't remember if they brought him back to this film either. So
every time I hear Fire Fist, I think about that line from Deadpool where he goes, "Does it burn up to the wrist or to the elbow?" So funny.
But that's all we got for the news today. So scheduling wise, we probably won't do anything next weekend, it being the 4th of July weekend, even though the 4th is on a Thursday. But still probably just the weekend, because we know people are doing things and it's a busy weekend. Yeah. So our next episode will be The Boys 6 and 7 on the hold on, where's my calendar at? On the
probably like the 14th or something.
The 14th, yes. So we'll be back in 2 weeks from today with The Boys episodes 6 and 7. Let me look at the calendar too, because hopefully we get. I thought Andy would be back for The Boys, but we know that the week of the 25th is Deadpool and Wolverine premiere, so we might have Andy back for the preview, possibly for that. And then for the review. But it's nice too, because as The Boys is ending, we're back with a Marvel film. And then I don't know what's next after that.
Yeah, it seems like there's going to be probably a long dry period of probably not a lot going on.
Well, so Agatha's in September.
Okay, yeah.
Let's look at the slate real quick. What is the movie?
I mean, if that's in September, I mean, that's quite a ways if Deadpool and Wolverine's, at the end of July, so.
Let's look at the schedule real quick before we go. I figured today's episode will be quicker, but we're not. Let me see here. Let me get into July. I think the big thing in July is going to be Deadpool and Wolverine. Ooh, I forgot Maxine came out. I gotta watch that. The whole Pearl, X, and now Maxine's the 3rd film in that series. I gotta watch that one still. Dun dun dun. So we know that Deadpool and Wolverine is July 26th on a Friday, which means Thursday night we'll probably be able to see it. August, I really don't see anything big in August that pops out. Borderlands is August 9th. It's gonna be on IMAX. Anything else? Alien Romulus is going to be August 16th. These are just movies too. I'm not looking up shows at all. The Crow comes out August 23rd. September, Beetlejuice. September. So
Beetlejuice.
What else? Spider-Man. Oh, I'm sorry. Superman, the Christopher Reeve story comes out September 20th, along with Transformers 1. Joker, Folie à Deux is October 4th.
Okay.
Venom: The Last Dance, October 25th. Gladiator 2, November 22nd. What's in December? Kraven the Hunter, December 13th. Lord of the Rings, December 13th. Sonic the Hedgehog 3, December 20th. And that's it. Did you also see, too, that it looks like Dune 3 and the new Star Wars movie might release on the same day?
No, I didn't know that.
So yeah, it's like Dennis. They haven't officially said it's Dune 3, but there's an untitled Denis Villeneuve film that's coming out the same day as the next Star Wars film, or the same weekend. So I wonder if that's going to get moved. It was at Dune 3. I think it's in 2026.
Interesting.
Yeah, or 2025. I can't remember which one it is, but they're the same weekend.
It's interesting.
Yeah. So anyways, we'll be back in 2 weeks. Everyone have a safe and fun Independence weekend. Enjoy for those in the U.S.
Don't lose any fingers with fireworks.
Yes.
So
keep eyeing your luggage. That's it. Anything else before we go today, Alex?
No, just have a great 4th of July, and we'll see you guys in a couple weeks. So.
Yep, I echo that. So we'll see you later. Have a good one.
See ya.